The Ghana Statistical Service says it is collaborating with the Ghana Health Service to vaccinate about 85,000 field officials who will be involved in the 2021 population and housing census before the start of the exercise. The vaccination exercise is scheduled to take place from the 31st of May to 8th of June 2021. At a press briefing in Accra, government statistician Professor Samuel Kakraba-Inim said the service is taking all the necessary steps to ensure the safe conduct of the exercise.
In 8 days' time, that is between now, the 23rd of May to the 31st of May, we're going to start with our major and last training program, which is a training of field officers. And for the 2021 population and housing census, we've identified the need to put in the classroom 76,500 field enumerators and supervisors, of which 70,000 of them will be deployed to the field. The second most important date that I want to put out there, which is going to occur in the next 21 days, is the start of the listing of structures. Population and housing census is anchored by two pivotal objectives. One has to do with complete coverage, and the second has to do with accurate data. For purposes of complete coverage, we have to chalk and list all structures that are at different stages of completion ahead of the enumeration exercise. And this exercise has been scheduled to start from the 13th of June 2021. That gives us 21 days ahead of the start of the listing of structures. And the main date that we are all looking forward to, which thankfully the Honorable Minister talked about, and I want to emphasize, is the celebration of the Census 9. The Census 9 is very critical, and as we speak, we are 35 days ahead of the celebration of the Census 9. It remains critical because the enumeration that would conduct from the 28th of May to the 11th of July would use 27th 9th as a reference 9.
The 2021 Population and Housing Census, with the slogan "You Count, Get Counted," will provide opportunity for the country to gather credible and comprehensive data on the citizenry towards transforming the economy for sustainable development. The census was originally scheduled for 2020 but will now take place from the 27th of June 2021. The Ghana Statistical Service is the lead agency for the conduct of the census and has divided the country into 51,921 enumeration areas to ensure easy collection of geospatial data across the 260 metropolitan, municipal, and district assemblies. This year's census will be the 6th conducted in Ghana since the post-independence era. The country conducted a national census in 1960, 1970, 1984, 2000, and 2010. Ghana's population has since moved from 6.7 million in 1960 to 24.6 million in 2010 and currently estimated at 30 million.
A year has passed by since George Floyd was killed by a Minneapolis police officer, sparking global protests, and supporters, activists, and his family will honor Floyd with a series of celebrations of his life and marches Tuesday. From Dallas to Washington, D.C. to Minneapolis, Floyd's name echoes across the country in recognition of a man who has become a symbol in the fight for racial equality and police reform. It has been a year since George Floyd was killed in police custody in the U.S., an event which sparked protests around the world. He was an unarmed black man who was stopped by police in Minneapolis and died after being held down by a police officer. The officer involved, Derek Chauvin, lost his job and was later found guilty of George Floyd's murder. Floyd's death led to lots of debates about racism and inequality, and there were big Black Lives Matter marches in lots of countries calling for changes to policing, education, and culture. According to White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki, Floyd's sister Bridget Floyd, his daughter Gianna Floyd, and Gianna's mother, Rosie Washington, will visit White House at the invitation of President Joe Biden. The family meeting will be private, so Biden can have a real conversation and preserve that with the family. The family visits will come as the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act remains stalled in the Senate. Despite Biden setting an initial goal of having the legislation passed by Tuesday, Psaki said Friday that Biden wants the bill on his desk as quickly as possible. The bill includes provisions to set up a national registry of police misconduct, a ban on racial and religious profiling by law enforcement, and an overhaul of qualified immunity for police officers. Other members of Floyd's family are expected to attend memorial events in Minneapolis on Tuesday, according to a family spokesman. One of those events of a celebration of life, which includes a day of games, food, inflatable attractions for youth and special performances by Grammy Award-winning artists and local talents. Elsewhere, organizers in Dallas are hosting a solidarity march and rally on Tuesday, and the California-based Pacific Symphony is streaming a free concert in honor of Floyd. Several other events honoring Floyd have been held in recent days. Bridget Floyd spoke during a rally on Sunday in Minneapolis, where she vowed to be a voice for George Floyd and advocate for change. She was joined by civil rights attorney Ben Crump and Reverend Al Sharpton. The George Floyd Memorial Foundation is also asking supporters to honor the anniversary of Floyd's death by joining its mission of ending systemic violence against Black Americans. The foundation has urged supporters to use Tuesday to call their elected officials, particularly their senators, and demand that they pass the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, register to vote, help promote the foundation's work on social media, and donate to the foundation's programs that supports the Black community.
President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo says it is time to transform the African continent and bring prosperity to the peoples of the continent in line with the goal of Agenda 2063 of the African Union. This, he believes, can be achieved by embracing and remaining committed to African values and cultures in its quest to modernize for development. The president made this clarion call at the 4th session of the 5th Pan-African Parliament at Midrand in South Africa on Monday. In his address at the opening session, President Akufo-Addo called on Africans to be more self-reliant if they wanted to see development on the continent. Stressing that modernization was not westernization, President Akufo-Addo urged Africans to uphold its creative arts and not turn its back on its customs and traditions if the peoples want to attain the African dream.
Even whilst we are proud of our history, our culture and our arts, we must recognize the forces of change and modernization that are knocking insistently on our doors. Too often, modernization has been seen as synonymous with westernization. But modernization is not necessarily the same as westernization. As the experiences of the Asian tigers have shown, nations can modernize in their own way, borrowing from outside whilst maintaining the essentials of their own culture. The success or failure of our modernization will be determined largely by how well we preserve what is good about our culture whilst modifying the aspects that no longer suit our needs. As we dedicate this year to the promotion of Africa's arts, culture, and heritage, against the background of increasing global expression of interest and investments in the sector, which should use the occasion to promote the patenting of Africa's creative designs, to protect intellectual property, folklore, and traditional knowledge, and adopt other measures to protect us against counterfeiting and piracy. The Africa we want may never be realized if we turn our backs on our culture, customs, and heritage.
President Akufo-Addo used the opportunity to add his voice to calls for the return of African artifacts being kept in museums across the world.
We must intensify our efforts at retrieving our looted cultural treasures, which are being housed in the museums of the nations that stole them from us, and making money for them instead of for us. Come what may, whatever the obstacles, we must get them back. I encourage all others to emulate the laudable examples of those countries which have committed themselves to the process of restoration. To this end, I had the honor 2 weeks ago to cut the sod for the construction of a Pan-African World Heritage Museum near Winneba in the central region of Ghana, which is intended to house artifacts and cultural objects from all parts of the Pan-African world. When it opens its doors to the world, it will be a major contributor to our ability to imbibe a deep consciousness of the ideals and goals of Pan-Africanism.
President Akufo-Addo reiterated the need for unity and togetherness if the continent is to succeed in its aspirations, more especially during this period of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Indeed, the realities confronting our respective countries are those of guaranteeing accelerated sustainable development, the effective integration of our economies into the high end of the global value chain, the eradication of poverty and inequality, and the marginalization of our nations. If we are to succeed in these endeavors, our best bet is to be united. The oft-cited Ghanaian proverb, "One broomstick on its own can be easily broken, but put together cannot be broken," should be our guiding principle. The threats of climate change, the phenomenon of illegal mass migration, and the scourge of armed conflicts, terrorism, and violent extremism can be met head-on and defeated if we act together. One thing the pandemic of COVID-19 has taught all of us is that we must hasten the process of regional and continental integration, because acting together will boost our capacity to succeed.
The president strongly urged leaders in Africa to grab the opportunity in these moments and time in history to transform and bring prosperity to all African peoples on the continent.
It is time, my dear brothers and sisters, for us to transform our countries and bring prosperity to our peoples. We cannot continue to live in the continent as the majority of what is left of the world's remaining minerals, and yet has the poorest people in the world. Let us join together to make it possible within our generation, and let us work together towards fulfilling in our time the Pan-African dream of a united Africa, which was so eloquently articulated by Ghana's first president, Kwame Nkrumah, in the early years of independence.
The Pan-African Parliament, also known as the African Parliament, is the legislative body of the African Union and held its inaugural session in March 2004. The Pan-African Parliament is one of the organs of the African Union as set out by the treaty establishing the African Economic Community. The Parliament is also intended as a platform for people from all African states to be involved in discussions and decision-making on the problems and challenges facing the continent.